All right, and I'll apologize right away. I'll be muting in and out because
No problem. No problem at
I am
all.
working.
So guys, we're a small group today. I'll try to carry the discussion as best I can. So welcome to Run It Back #2. And of course, a big thank you to the Rising Coaches platform for allowing me to continue with this venture and to show support the whole way. So, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm Menelik Fernandez. I'm the interim head coach at Fleming College. I'm up here in Canada. The premise of Run It Back is just basically we are taking teams that have played each other previously, and we are utilizing that as sort of like a sample size to game plan for a hypothetical rematch that's in the short-term future. The teams that we're looking at this week are Oklahoma and Texas, and we're trying to take it on from the perspective of the Oklahoma Sooners. So to give you a little bit of background on the matchups that had happened previously with these teams, Oklahoma and Texas played twice in the 1920 season, both in 2020. And they played twice and they split their games. They both ended up. So this is a little weird. I don't know if anybody can give me some background on this, but according to the NCAA's page, they were both 8-8 with conference. 8-8 with overall records of 18-11. But if you go to both of their own team pages, it says they were both 9-9 with conference records of 19-12. So I don't know why there's a disparity between the two, but basically the two teams had the same records. The first game on January 8th, Oklahoma won 72-62. And the second game on March 3rd, Oklahoma lost by 1 point, 52-51. And I'm just going to put up a quick poll for those of us who have joined us. Big thanks to those of us who have. Obviously, it's July 4th weekend, so I mean, some people are busy here. But we'll launch this poll here, and I just want to know from the perspective of the people who are in our quote-unquote live audience, can Oklahoma beat Texas again, in your opinion? I need some Jeopardy music to keep it fun in the background. So the consensus is yes, they can, 3-1. So I'm going to share these results with you guys here. So we got one no. Let's start there. Who thinks no and why?
I think, based on how the season was going for both teams, I just really think Texas was hot towards the end of the year. I think they won 5 out of their last 6.
Right.
They got crushed by Oklahoma State the last game. But, I think that was their senior day at Oklahoma State. So that's always the hardest game in my mind to play. But, I mean, to win 5 in a row, and now, hypothetically, would they be playing that next game? So after the Oklahoma State game, it'd be Oklahoma-Texas.
Yeah. So, like, you take out sort of – I know there's a lot that can go into this formula, so to speak.
Right.
Like, where are you in the season? Who's healthy and all that? But,
Right.
like, you're assuming both teams are at full strength. You're assuming that, like, a lot of the emotional stuff is removed, so you're not playing, like, a senior game and like the game counts, but it's not like a tournament game, so to speak, or whatever. So
Correct.
just sort of assuming the best for both teams.
Right. Yeah, that's why I just think that, I think Texas, just with their momentum going, I know Oklahoma was, so-so towards the end of the year. They beat Texas Tech. They had some big wins, but just how Texas was playing, and especially in that second game, the free throw differential was so drastic, and Texas still had an opportunity at the end to win. I think it was, they had their first free throw, what was it, in like the last 2 minutes of the game? I think it was an intentional or
something like that.
Some type of cheap foul. But, I mean, if they can pull that game out, especially with all the cards against them, I truly think they would win the next game no matter what.
Nice. So that's interesting. Everybody else thinks that it's a possibility. Let me give you some sort of game notes. I'll sort of talk about this stuff, and if anything catches you guys' ear, jump in, let me know what you think. But these were some of the things that I thought were sort of value. Well, that's okay, Mike, no problem. Type anything in the chat that you have as points if you want, just to make things easy. So game notes of value were both teams lost at home. which I thought was interesting. Right? You're stronger at home, so to speak. You want to take care of home, obviously. There was no Jericho Sims in game number 2, which I thought was a big difference maker, so to speak. I thought he is by far the better of the two, in my opinion. We'll sort of take a poll on what you guys think afterwards, but he's the better of the two main big men that they use. And I think they had 4 overall type big men, but he's the best of them, in my opinion, if you look at the season stats. So in game number 2, Oklahoma shot 29 free throws, just like John was talking about. And that's due to Texas committing 29 fouls compared to Oklahoma's 10. So, I mean, if you watch that game, some of them were kind of touchy and it did sort of seem like there was a bit of a disparity, but obviously as coaches, you never really want to talk about like blaming it on refs or anything like that. But I thought that was a real interesting point. The next real interesting point, in my point of view, was Oklahoma shot 2 of 20 from the 3-point line in game number 2, and they were 0 of 8 in the second half. And I have some film on this. I actually want to ask you guys' opinion. Let's get into the second half I'm going to share here. First, I'm going to make it so that everybody can share in case they had anything. But I'm going to share, and I'm going to ask you guys, these are just second half 3-point shots. If you guys think that what was wrong here was just them taking really bad shots or just them missing. So second game, second half here. Everybody can see me here, right? We're good? Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So I clipped them just to try and shorten it a little bit. Let's talk about all 8 when they're done. Just sort of, hey, are they good shots or are they just missing? Or like, what's the game plan going forward in your opinion?
I mean, Brady Manick is one of their top 3-point shooters. So right off the bat, those are his shots. So I think.
I agree. I also want to just take a second and talk about the quality of this pass.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's an elite pass right there. But no, I agree with. I'm sorry, I don't have his name. But I agree with him that being Manic, like that's an elite shooter right there, and you got to let him take his shots. And I think one of the good things about a lot of these is the difference from the first game and the second game to me was even though Oklahoma was missing shots, I thought they did get better looks. I know that Doolittle's a really good isolation player, but in the first game it seemed like they were just trying to pick on his matchup with the big, and they would get the advantage that they wanted off the matchup, but then they would settle for a contested pull-up instead of a open 3, and I thought they did a better job of moving the ball.
I would agree with all those statements. And sorry, his name is John, just so you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
No, it's all good. So I want to talk about this for a second. So one of the things that I wanted to get into in a little bit in terms of game planning was I actually thought that what's number 24's first name? Sorry. Jamal Bienemy. I honestly thought when I was watching the second game that they needed to go to Bienemy more and try and put him in more screen and roll type situations. I thought he was just so much faster than any of the bigs, because like Texas to me was in drop coverage pretty much the whole way. And in the first game, like I have some clips of it that I'll get to a little bit later, but in the first game, it really looked like Oklahoma was able to get all the way to the rim sort of at liberty, especially when the ball was in Bienemy's hands. And like, I don't understand why they went away from it. So maybe somebody can give me some perspective on that when we get back to it. But can Bienemy just not shoot overall? Like I didn't get season stats and like, look at this shot. That's like 4 feet left.
I have no idea, honestly. Texas and Oklahoma are 2 teams that I'm pretty unfamiliar with on how their season went with both of them. But as far as he goes, I thought he was really good, especially in the first half of the first game, like you talked about, getting into the lane and doing that. But I had a sort of an interesting point where I think that him, and I don't know if he's a freshman. I know that one of the announcers mentioned that he's pretty young, but I thought he had a lot of like lapses off the ball on defense in the first game.
Yeah.
And I was like, at what point does the trade-off of him creating these scoring opportunities equate him missing all these rotations leading to open shots for Texas or gambling?
Right. So I would agree with that point. Sorry, I'm just going to read in what Mike is saying here.
25.3% is his 3-point.
There you go.
So I guess that's why they're
Yeah.
like they were going over against him in the first game, and I guess trying to encourage the mid-range, so to speak. And I thought he was fairly strong in there, but I also thought he was fairly strong in taking on the big.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mike wants us to just sort of read in because he took a look at the game, obviously, and his phone won't allow his audio to work. But just for those of us like who watch at a later time, he wants to talk about a little bit of the quality and the intention behind the threes and the shot selection. Coach mentioned trying to go through one player versus trying to play through a paint touch and hard closeouts, which gave them good shots. So like to comment on that, I would say that the consensus from everybody else in here is that the 3-point shots in the second game were pretty good shots. They just weren't falling. I did actually feel that they were getting paint touches. I don't know, Mike, maybe if you disagree with me on that one. I did feel that – what's the gesture one more time? Just basically, like I thought that they did get pretty good paint touches before they were shooting on a lot of stuff. They were running pretty good action. But I thought that at the point that you're like, at what point in the game do you start going away from shooting the three and start going to the rim? Like I'm a guy in my late 30s, and when I played basketball, coaches would bench you for taking too many threes. And obviously due to the points per possession and the effective field goal percentage and all that, that's not the mentality anymore. Coaches are now like, shoot through it. But I'm very much reminded of the Houston Rockets back in the playoffs when, in my opinion, if they don't miss like 20 something threes in a row, they probably beat the Warriors and move on to the finals, so to speak. But they just keep sticking with it. So like, what's you guys' perspective on when do I like, they went 0 of 8 in that third quarter or in that second half, and they went 2 of 20 in the game. And that's 40% of their overall shots that they're taking, and they're shooting 2 of 20 on them. So where do you as a coach go away from that, change your game plan, call an audible and say, yo, we got to go to the rim, attack? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't necessarily think like you have like a set like make or miss. I do think there's a time when you would call that, and I feel like the point where that happens is where you feel like it's hurting you more than it's helping you, especially transitioning onto the defensive end as well. If they're taking those, long rebounds or air balls that are pretty much turnovers and turning them into points on the other end, then I think that's when you say, okay, we need to stop shooting all these threes. We need to take it to the rim. The foul count, like you said, was so bad that, you go to the rim a couple times, you're probably going to get even more free throw attempts, which would have been huge. But I do think in general that is something that needs to be established before the game starts, where you have a guy, and I think it's the Arkansas women's coach, Mike Neighbors. He has like a green light shooting drill that he does, or green light shooting system, where if you make so many threes in this drill, then you're able to shoot them in the game, or you're not able to shoot them in a game where you have a limit where it's like, okay, if I miss 2 or 3 and I'm a 25% 3-point shooter like that guy, then, it's not feasible to take 4 or 5 threes and miss them.
Right. So Mike is actually just jumping in the chat saying this is where he'd insert his conversation about effective field goal percentage and shooting distribution between threes, layups, pull-up twos, free throws, all of that. And Mike, I'm going to take that one real quick. So, a lot of people talk about the analytics of basketball and shot selection and all of that. And for me, to answer my own question, going back, I'll use this discussion to just sort of answer my own question in the discussion, is that like most people are familiar with the order of operations of shots now, where it's like a free throw is your highest points per possession, then an uncontested three is your within the 10 feet within the paint is your second highest points per possession when it's unguarded. Then moving to the 3-point line, uncontested, then 3-point line off the dribble. Then after that, it's uncontested, 15 to 18 feet. And then after that, it's the contested 15 to 18 feet. So in theory, you want your opponent shooting as many contested 2-point shots in the 15 to 18 foot range, while you're getting as many as possible of the higher points per possession. And then you just basically would outmath them. So for me, going back to the question that I posed to you guys, it would be a feel thing, not a specific number of misses before I would change the game plan and say, hey, let's start attacking the rim. So if we're, major free throw disparity, well, that's your highest points per possession. So that right away is sort of a signal to me. Like one of my assistant coaches is alerting me on the bench that like, hey, like there's a real disparity. We're getting the whistle right now. I'm definitely starting to call more plays, like, just a spread ball screen even that's going to get us to the rim against the big so that we can attack, so that we can try to get those higher percentage shots. And if they're not taking that away, I know John and I have had to talk about this before or whatever, but if they're not taking that away, I am the kind of coach who's going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over until you can defend it. And I'm not going to change that based upon if I'm missing really good shots. So in this one, I don't know if I was Oklahoma's coach, if I would really have changed the game plan, because even though they shot 2 of 20 in the game, they still were within 1 point the second time, right? Like it was still a very close game. They had a real good chance of winning it. And I think that obviously had to do with the foul disparity for sure. But like really at the end of the day, even though you're not shooting so well, you're one decision away from being able to still win the game. One thing could go one way or another, and you still get the W, and that's all most people really care about. I want to mention just before, Mike, did I do that justice? Give me a thumbs up. He gave me an in-between. I want to mention a few more points of value just before I move on. So in the second game, Oklahoma overall only shot 28%. So the initial question in this was, can Oklahoma beat Texas again? And John said, nah, not so much. But they were 1 point away when they were shooting 28%. And I don't think that had very much to do with poor shot selection. I do think it had more to do with not shooting the ball very well on that night. So I think if they were able to shoot a higher percentage and a lot of other things in the game were to go similarly, I think it is possible. Oklahoma's second loss in these splits was actually their worst offensive output for the entire season as well. So John may attribute that to Texas being on a roll, winning 5 games in a row, but I think even with the momentum, they were only able to do it by 1 point. So I think that's kind of an interesting point there. One other big thing that I thought was very interesting was without they're big. Sorry. Names escape me a lot of the time. So with Royce Ham in the position instead of having Jericho Sims in, I found it interesting that that Texas was plus 10 in the paint comparative to the games being equal in the paint when they weren't using their backup center, so to speak, and when they did have Jericho in the game. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And one more thing that I want to dump in there just before I ask for a couple comments from you guys is that in the first game, Texas lost by the spread and had 4 players in double figures. And then in the second game, Coleman puts up 21 and nobody else cracks the double-digit number. And they end up winning by the 1 point. He scores basically like 40% of their points. So if you are Oklahoma, how does this affect what you're going to do? This particular last one, how does this affect what you're going to do in terms of game planning for the next one on the defensive end? Are you going to try and, like, are you going to attribute that to saying, hey, Coleman had the game of his life or something like that? Or are you going to try to take away from him and make other guys beat you, just given the sample size that you guys were looking at? Anybody jump in, please, and thanks.
I think you keep the same game plan if you're Oklahoma. Overall, I think, that's Coleman's one game to shine, and, everyone always has those, and you can't prepare for them. But if you focus too much on him now, those that are a little more talented and then could score the ball at a higher clip, I mean, they'll go off. So I think the game plan was right for Oklahoma. But back to what we were talking about, the shot selection for those players with Oklahoma. I mean, Reeves and Manick are the best three-point shooters they have. But what I noticed, too, is that everyone had confidence shooting from the outside. So no one was hesitating. No one was, should I do this? So I think that, that's probably their philosophy. If you're confident, whether it's in transition and regardless of your three-point percentage, you could just jack the shot up. So that's what I noticed. I mean, no one was really hesitant to shoot a three. They were just so confident that even though they're not very good at it, they still let it fly. So maybe that's their philosophy. If you're confident to shoot, boom, shoot as much as you can. But us kind of critiquing it on the outside, you're like, I don't know if you should do that. But I saw a true, a positive confidence from all those athletes shooting from the outside.
I would agree with that 100%. I think that there was very little hesitation. It did sort of seem like they knew who the objective of each play was, right? So it's like, hey, if John's our guy, we got to get John the ball here. This is what we're trying to do. I'm not so sure that I would go away from that either, in my opinion. I think that for sure, shooting with confidence has a big deal. I do sort of think that there is a fine line in certain games, but in my opinion, despite the fact that they didn't shoot well, I don't think they hit that here. And I would probably keep the same offensive outlook going into the next game. Mike mentioned some interesting points in the chat, just sort of on the defensive side. And I want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. Just basically saying the Texas younger guys need to work on their discipline within defensive players. Sorry, I'm not reading this right. They need to know when their shots are blocked. Players need to recognize their verticality principle and be charge takers. And then he says, in addition to that, Oklahoma's offense lacked progression within their offense. Texas showed more so in game 2. So does anybody, is that just an overall agreement statement, or would anybody adjust sort of their game planning based upon what Mike has said in there?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I wanted to say real quick, though, I think that if they were to play again specifically, that I think the ball screen coverage in general from Oklahoma needs to be a lot better. And that's got to be their point of emphasis, because a lot of what Texas will do, it'll either be a ball screen set with cuts, or it'll be, shifting to like a split cut into middle ball screen, stuff like that. And I think that a lot of times that opened up a short roll that Texas had some success with, but then it wasn't something that they continued to go through. But I think once you get on film and they see that on film, that's something that they're going to look to go through more and more. And I think that's where Coleman had a lot of big success in the second game. Basically he just attacked the hedge guy's outside shoulder, come back, and then attack his man's outside shoulder once he got back off the hedge, and either he created advantage for a pull-up or get to the rim. So I think that overall, I think in both games that their ball screen coverage wasn't great. It needed to get a lot better, knowing that that's the point of emphasis for Texas's half-court offense.
So that's an awesome point, and I agree with you. In your opinion, let's say I'm your head coach, we're sitting in on a coaches meeting, we've won one, we've lost one, we got a short turnaround coming up. So, let's say we played on Wednesday, game that's totally irrelevant to this discussion, and we're playing them on Saturday. And you recognize that's your point of emphasis. You've watched a lot of film, it's your scout, whatever, so to speak. And what would you implement in those few days on that short turnaround? Would it just be a discussion and some film, like, hey guys, we're actually kind of shitty at this, and and this is what we need to do better? Or would it be more so of like, hey, we need some drills in this amount of time that's going to get us to do better at this? Like, so the thing that I struggle with, where this question is coming from, is sometimes when you're in season, especially with seasoned coaches at very high levels, right? Like, your coverage is your coverage. You're not going to change the way that you play. So like, I see Jimmy just joined us here. Jimmy could even attest to this a lot of the time. Like, Jimmy's coverage is Jimmy's coverage. That's the way that their team is going to play moving forward or whatever. So if your coverage wasn't working in a previous game, what are your teaching points on a short turnaround other than just saying, hey, you have to be better at it, right?
Right. So I think that specifically, I think you'd have a discussion about it. You'd watch film, and then I think the best way to do it would be practicing 5-on-5. I'm not specific. I mean, they just like sort of showed and go real quick, like a soft hedge. And I'm not specifically super familiar with that and the specific ins and outs of how you teach that, because we were a strictly trapping team last year, and that's what we taught.
Right.
But I put a lot more emphasis on the details and just making sure that, you're getting good tags. Your tag guy is always aware. And I'd hammer it out 5-on-5 for at least like 10 to 15 minutes that day, or the practice days that you have, and really just try to hammer in all the little details of that and try to just make yourself be a little bit better. I don't think that there's going to be a full turnaround, and obviously you're not going to switch your coverage, but it's got to be a point of emphasis in practice, and they have to see it 5-on-5.
So I agree with you. For me personally, what I would do is, like, when I'm in season, and I've had a lot of coaches debate me about this and have different sort of viewpoints about it, but I do quite a bit less skill work than my comparable coaches in my conference. I believe that practice time is specifically for that, practicing. So wanting to defend particular actions, etc. And then, like, I was before the advent of his site, but like on Basketball Immersion, you'll hear Chris Oliver talk a lot about the game's approach and the 0-second decision training, etc. So I believe that you could actually summarize all of the actions that are possible in basketball. It would be a ridiculously long list, but there are quite a few more typical actions that coaches in your conference are going to use. So like, if you're playing whatever coach and he likes help side stagger a lot, well, in my practices leading up to those, I'm going to play against a lot of help side stagger, and I'm going to try and implement using the guys that I'm going to use in that particular game as much as possible, so that they get a lot of reps. And in that short turnaround, sometimes bench players don't really love it, but for them, their role then becomes to challenge the guys that are ahead to getting better. And that is their role at this point, because the guys that are ahead in the rotation have earned the spot of being ahead of them in the rotation, so to speak. So to answer my own question, going back, I think I would align with what you're saying, Connor, in that on a short turnaround, I would utilize as much practice time as possible, just sort of working on that. And it would probably be 5-on-5 type shells. And I wouldn't change what I'm doing in terms of like my screen coverage. I'd be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to live and die by it, but we got to be better at it. So we would use that time to practice it. And whatever my teaching points are, like, if I'm a toes to the sideline hedge guy, or if I'm a 2-swipe hedge guy, or if I'm a don't get split hedge guy, so make sure you're close to the initial, the ball defender and all that, I would really hammer those home for those couple of practices on the short turnaround. So I'm going to just put up one more poll here. You know what? No, I'm going to do this first. I'm going to share screen one more time, because we're talking about ball screen stuff. And I'm going to show you some pick and rolls from the 2 games. It'll start with the second game first. And this will go back to the point that I was asking about earlier, about should Oklahoma have put themselves in more spread ball screen and attacked their drop coverage quite a bit more. I want to hear you guys' perspective. So we'll actually just go through all of that real quick. So this is pick and roll in game 2. And everybody's good, right?
Mhm.
Got a thumbs up there? Awesome. So you guys can see the coverage, but then it looks like in the first game especially, there was a lot of confusion with Texas's bigs at what point they needed to go back to the screener. And like, I mean, this guy blows the layup, but they got a lot of downhill stuff where they could cut the angle and they could get going all the way to the rim.
Yeah, that was bad.
So this is an interesting one. This goes back to, this is Bienemy, and I was saying that I thought he was quite a bit quicker, but this is just a reject because they were actually going to hedge here, in my opinion. But, you know, gets to his spot, finds his little shot. He's got to make that, but I thought they were getting some pretty good looks. This is from the first game now, the one that they won. Again, confusion at the point. That's the very first play of the game.
Right.
So then to counter that moving forward, it looks like Texas was trying to set up as in a hedge for the next coverage. He reads it. He goes opposite. Don't love where he got to. I think he should actually make the pocket pass there, and the roll should have been faster. But I really feel that they needed to get into quite a bit more. And just let me know if you guys think that this is sort of proving my point. And then not only getting into quite a bit more, but I think they needed to use this guy on the screen quite a bit more. Watch the speed differential on him. He splits. He gets right to the rack. He finishes. He's got a couple tough ones in there.
Yep.
So Austin Reeves, so they actually switched forward here in little 15, 18-foot jump shot. I just threw that in there so you could see that they did play various coverages. They are capable of doing that, but I thought they really needed to get both Bienemy and Austin the ball more, getting them in downhill situations, finishing at the rim. And just like I said, there'll be like, I think maybe 2 more. Let me know if you guys differentiate and why, in my opinion, there. He just can't shoot that 3. That's really what it is. I wonder if with him, he's not comfortable because of the statistic thing, or if Jimmy is actually present and watching right now, he's getting an eye twitch with all the 15 to 18-foot jump shots.
Seizure.
But again, Austin right to the rim, right? And I think this is the last one.
Menelik. I think, you know, it's more, he's a really good ISO player. So that's where he's trying to take advantage of those mid-range opportunities. And but like you said, you're completely correct. Austin Reeves needs to be featured more. Just because he is sneaky athletic, but also he can shoot it from, you know, I like to say Steph Curry range.
There's, yeah, I agree 100%. There's a play, and I'm going to
Can you go back to that play real quick? Go back to that. Go back to that
yeah, sure, no problem, Tom.
Because this is something that I've been like dying watching. There's a lot of guys.
Were we at
Last bucket they just scored? Like, and this is something I think we need to do a better job of teaching guys to do.
Was it this or after this?
It might have been the rescreen. It was after this. Like, that's a horrible shot, right? Like that right there off of 1 foot against 2 guys. Like I think we need to do a better job of like
make it right.
Like, I mean, we need to teach guys to go off of 2 feet in that position, right? Like, that's like a 2 foot. Like, I mean, like this right here. Like, so like roll replace, right? I don't think this is it. Yeah, this might be it. Does 35 run into a ball screen here? Yeah, right here. Yeah. So like this play right here, like this is like we got to teach guys right here. Like go like if he, I mean, sure he finishes it and that's great, but like guys need to work on like jump stopping right here. I think off of 2 feet, like keep running it to the point where he gets shoulder to shoulder with the big. Like at this point he knows like just a step back. At the point that he knows that center is like there or whatever, like he's got to be thinking throwback, right? Like I'm telling him think throwback, because like if he jump stops right here, like he knows, like even like a step farther back where 33 is like in front of him chest to chest, like this isn't a high percentage shot to me. Like this isn't like my play here is like a jump stop here and turn around and throw it right to 35.
Right.
Like there's but like we don't like all like there's no trainers on this, are there? Like this like these trainers are like teaching these dudes to like fall down and like throw like these like quick like shots up and stuff. So like we either have to teach guys one of two things. Like either I'm getting this ball on the rim for an offensive rebound, because like that's the other thing is like you can get an offensive rebound here on this shot, but like I'm like more and more like we got to teach our guards. And Jimmy, I'd be interested to see what you said about this too. Like play off at 2 feet right here, like jump stop, play off at 2 feet, and like that's like an easy pass right back to that guy for a wide open jump shot, right? Like, and if you have a pick and pop 4, like you can win so many games that way. Like, just I mean, there's nobody within 15. I don't know what number 2's doing out here denying the wing out here. Like, there's no like who helps on that then? You know what I mean? Like, but like we're like telling these dudes like, hey, let's work on falling down and throwing a shot up with our left hand and like all our jelly and all this stuff. Like, let's make a simple play. Like when I worked at Cleveland State, the biggest thing was boring scoring plays. Like that was what he kept saying, boring scoring plays. And like a 2-foot jump stop here, like that should be automatic, like 2-foot jump shot, throw it back. But I don't know why that bothers me so much, but just something to think about.
I'm curious to know if anybody has anything different, because I do. And I'd like to hear if anybody actually aligns with the thought in my head. But Tommy, I totally hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree with the point, but on this particular play, it's bottom of shot clock. It's only 4 seconds left. I don't think he's got enough time to stop, pivot, kick, and shoot.
I mean, still,
I think the defense just like I'm looking at it from the other side. Like it's bad on ball defense, and the 5 should be walling it off anyways. Like right from the get go, like regardless of the scouting report, man, like if you rewind it back, like you could tell they probably want to go under it, but there's no like pressure the ball right there.
right.
And then you get under. Like he's just the reason why he lets a layup happen is because he tries so hard to get under, but he doesn't play the ball. Like
he doesn't get back.
You would live with this, right? Though you guys would live with this.
It's
guys
like what's that?
Like right here, if I'm the point guard, like I'm thinking soft hedge. If I get chest to chest with this center, like I'm thinking throwback right away, right?
Like, and I don't know if he can shoot. I don't know what 35 is, but defensively,
we're on. Like, there's a reason that dude's out on the floor, man. Like, look at him. There's a reason he out on the floor.
Man, there's a lot of dudes in college that can't even shoot a 3.
But what I'm saying is, say that he can shoot. I mean, he's popping to the 3-point line like he can't shoot, right? Like, if I'm a point guard right now and I see this, like, I'm thinking throwback. Because I mean, you're living with the shot that he takes, right? Like, if you're at Brooklyn, you're living with that shot, right?
That's why our 5 is dropped off. And if 0 wants to get under, like he's trying to run through 2 people right now because he didn't play the ball defensively. So now he's fucked. Like, and that's why 11's able to get that angle. Like, you just put yourself in that position, regardless if it's a good shot or bad shot. Like, you got to reroute him or you're going to switch it. There's 5 on the clock.
Right. Yeah. So for me, let me just jump in real quick. The reason that I disagree on this particular play and not overall, Tommy, is so for me, if I'm going under, I'm probably going to jam the big. That's what I'm going to do if I'm going under. So I found that it was really weird that they tried to both at this point sort of soft hedge or show, whatever you want to call it, and then tried to have the original ball defender go above the screen defender. Right? Like
it's bad angles.
At that point, you have now destroyed your angle of recovery, right? Because right here, it looks like he's going to trip over the screen defender. So when he gets to here, right here, like, here, half a step there, in my opinion, like if we talk about points per possession, order of operations, which we did in yours yesterday, Tommy, the highest points per possession is the free throw line. And then the second highest points per possession is within 8 feet. And I get what you're saying if he doesn't have the angle, but if this guy plants his right foot and gets 0 on his back, in Canada, we call it cobbing, keeping on back. I don't think that 0 has a legitimate chance of blocking this shot unless he's a freak athlete or blocking it without a foul, depending on how the refs are blowing the whistle. And we know that there was a real foul disparity in one of these 2 games. It actually wasn't this one. But I agree with you. Like, so number 35. I mean,
because they don't have a tag man here either. Like, they know the scouting report. Like, they're not bringing anybody in for a tag man. So there's no tag on a roll. I guess for me, like, I don't know. I just look at that and like if I'm a point guard and I come off and I see a center chest to chest and I know that my guy's a pick and pop, like I'm thinking I'm getting my pick and pop guy at jumper. Like I'm not thinking turn this corner like at all ever. Like I'm thinking, I mean, and I'm probably wrong on that, but like
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think in certain instances you're absolutely right. So in my opinion, if the center, so if number 33 had gotten chest to chest and completely cut him off, I agree with you. That's instantly jump stop, turn around, like back pivot, throw it to 35. They probably rotate from 3. So 35 or 1 both have a long closeout for a jump shot. But I think 33 defensively right now never gets in front of the ball. And, you know, sure, it's to your left hand, but I think that this is a pretty good shot.
well, when you show it like at this angle right here, like that's not a horrible shot, but like I'm just thinking like if he stops right there, like look how open 35 is.
I agree.
Like that dude could fly that dude could fly a kite, judge the wind, and still be able to get that shot off. You know what I mean? Like,
but points per possession, order of operations, right? Free throw line first.
I think we all can agree that's horrible defense on 33's part. Like,
yeah, it is. And so this goes back to the point of what I was saying about showing all of the screen and roll coverage type stuff. There was a real problem with Texas in both of these games where regardless of if they were trying to hedge, regardless of if they were in their drop, or regardless of if they were in sort of like a flat hedge, that they didn't really have a good point where their screen defender was going back in a timely manner. They were getting caught in this gray area over and over where they were just kind of like, is that mine? And the guard just never stopped. He was like, all right, you're not going to commit. I'm going to the rack.
That's why you guys do all your drop coverage. So there's no confusion. Like there would be no confusion on that, right? Everybody would know what they were doing. It looks like to me like they're trying to figure out, am I going over? Am I going under? Am I trapped? Like they don't know what they're doing.
Right. Exactly. That's where I think like what Menelik's saying is like there's almost identity confusion of what they're trying to do defensively. So like they don't do anything here. Like essentially, like the kid, he can't even get under the ball screen to get back. Like he's gonna go score the ball. There's 4 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, and like, you know, to the point, like Tommy, I know you're a bucket getter. We were talking about it last night or whatever. If I'm coming off that ball screen and I'm a bucket getter, I'm going to get my bucket. Like you got to stop.
That's just selfish to me though. Like I'm looking at this right now, and like if I were to watch this on film, like I would have a really hard time, no matter how good my point guard is, not calling him out in the film session and being like, you got to throw that to 35. Like, I don't know why, but there's just something that bothers me. And maybe it is because that 35 was me back in the day, like not moving much and like just out on the floor for one reason, like not playing defense, and defense wasn't one of them, you know, like, but like, I guess for me, now that I look at it, maybe because there was 4 seconds on the shot clock, I don't know their team dynamic either. Like if that's Kyrie, like obviously, like, you know, that's probably a high percentage shot for somebody like that. But I'm saying generally in college, like if that's our pick and pop 4 at Lamar that we have, and this is our 5-6 point, I don't care how big of a bucket getter he's getting. I'm expecting him to rondo that right there. Stop, rondo, throw that fake up in the air, turn around and throw that pass on the money right here where this guy can shoot that.
So interestingly enough, I actually believe the decision.
I don't know, but like when he slowed it down, it looked a little bit better.
The decision you're talking about, in my opinion, happens
right there,
right here, right? So right there. Because you can see that the big has got a problem. He's not committed. I now have the angle. So I think the decision that happens right here as opposed to right here.
Jimmy, you guys are drop coverage in that and going over the top of that, right?
So, I mean, probably, I'm guessing on this kid, we'd probably be under it. So the big's position would never change.
He would still be underneath the Big 12 logo, right? He'd be back underneath that.
Yeah, exactly. Like my thing, like if he's a good player, like that should be a foul. Like he has the angle the whole time. You got to be able to bait that. Like at the end of the day,
cut him off.
Yeah. So Jimmy, let me ask you this real quick. So if you're going under on that, right?
Yep.
What happens when they turn and rescreen it?
If it's inside the 3-point line, we go under again.
Really?
Yeah. Why would you go over?
The whole way down the floor.
So you're literally just going under all those until he meets somebody, until he gives the ball up or meets the
best teaching point I ever have, like with our defense, is any screen inside the 3-point line, we go under. Like it's non-negotiable. At the end of the day,
you're just going to give up a wide open. Like you're okay giving up that 18-footer.
Yeah,
that is the sole purpose of what they do.
What happens when he rolls into the guard? Then, like he goes under and he rolls into the. Sorry, Menelik, I'm getting.
No, it's all good. I love it.
But what happens when he rolls into the screener then? or like he rolls into the I go under it and my screener rolls into my on ball defender.
And what do you mean? So like
I set the screen at the top of the key, right, and I go under it, and the center rolls and he rolls into my guard. Like I just fight through it eventually and just. I mean, I guess that makes sense because you're willing to give up that 18, 17 footer regardless.
Exactly.
So even if he rolls into it, you're willing to give that up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keeps our rebounding position. You force a longer shot.
So why not go under on everything?
Better shooters.
So if it's a better shooter, you're going to go over the top and force that 15, 16 footer
or
with
like
somebody
you
behind
can look at it another way. Like I can get really into it, but like a guy that doesn't finish well at the rim, or I mean, say he's not an elite shooter, but you want to force him into the paint, you go over. And you force him into where he's not as efficient. So
that makes a lot of sense, right? Because I know a lot of guys
fan out everywhere else, right? You just fan out you fan out on the wings, right? You fan
can
out
make
there
a play.
just,
Smaller guards. That's what I did for our one of our scouts. I was like, he can't shoot, but we're going over and making this little fucker try to beat us.
Like so, you're basically saying if this dude can hit 10 floaters and 4 15-footers and go for 30 from anywhere from 10 to 12 feet over the top of my 7-footer, we'll get beat.
Yep. You got to know what's going to beat you.
So Jimmy,
I know it's going to beat us. Turnover.
This goes to this goes to a point just before you guys got in, and this was a question that I asked of everyone. But when you design a game plan, for the most part, if that game plan, like let's say you're saying exactly that, hey, I want Tommy hitting 15-foot jump shots, 10-foot floaters all game long. I'm going to live and die by that. Do you ever, like if you're dying by it, do you ever change? Or do you just go, nope, that's the game plan. We're going to stick with it.
Yeah. I think that's the mark of a good coach, honestly. Like if you notice those adjustments, like I'll give you a quick example. I don't want to take up too much time. I know we're at like a limit, but in our championship series last year, we played against the Rockets team. Isaiah Harden's team was their 5-man. We're in drop coverage. He's a like 27% 3-point shooter. Yep. And so our whole thing was like, let's deny everybody else. And if he can beat us from the 3-point line, tip your hat. We won game 1. Game 2, he comes out and hits 3 threes the first 3 minutes of the game. And now team's looking at us like, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, we just won game 1. And then we lost game 2. He hit 5 or 6 threes.
Hey, I got to run real quick. My daughter's screaming. And if I don't grab her, then my wife's
more important, man.
Go take care of her, man. Good to see you, Tommy.
But needless to say, we didn't adjust game 3 from what happened game 2. We thought, we're 1-1 with what we do. Let's stick to it. We probably should have adjusted back, and we didn't, and we lost the championship. So,
right.
It goes both ways. I see it. But I think that's the head coach's pulse and his feel.
So let me get a couple of these polls done real quick just because we're on a time limit, like I said. So here's our next poll, and it was just basically what was the biggest problem that needs to be fixed. We've talked about a lot of this stuff. So I'm just curious to see everybody's point of view here. It looks like shot selection's up first. And I'll give you guys 30 seconds to see what's up. So we got 3 shot selection. We got 1 3-point shooting. So I'll end this guy here. I'll just let you guys quickly see the results. You can see that when I hit share, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay. And then these were obviously all talking points along the way, but I will go just one more here. Who do you think hurts them more, Jericho Sims or Royce Ham Jr.? And I think we sort of covered this in discussion a little bit. Look at Jimmy getting it in. I love it, buddy. Jericho Sims. So who put in Royce? I wanna hear that.
I did.
Okay.
No, I think that obviously Sims is a really good player. I know he's been in Texas rotation for a long time now. And I know he's a really good rim protector. And I think that's where that's coming from, is his rim protection that he offers. But I thought the difference between the first game and the second game was in space. I think Doolittle killed Sims. And that's where he had a lot of his – that's where he made a lot of his money, was they were looking for that matchup against Sims. And, Doolittle was hitting tough shots. And like I said, you got to live with that when you're an isolation guy. But I think that Ham did a lot better of a job defensively the second game on one-on-one on their best player than Sims did.
So if you're Oklahoma, you want to see Ham again. You want to see Sims again, is what you're saying. You'd prefer that.
I would say based on the 2 games, yes. I don't know if it
overall
was
for the season is a totally different sample size than what we're talking about.
Right.
Very interesting. Like that point of view. And then the last one here, just before we no, there's 2 more. Sorry. We went through this, just sort of what's the answer to Oklahoma's 3-point shooting. Create situations to shoot less, keep shooting the same amount, which was about 40% of their shots. Unsure and take what you get. Excuse me. Wow. Who was unsure in there?
That was me.
Yeah. Okay. No problem. And then I'll share that with you guys. And then the very last one was, we just want to see if we've changed any minds in this discussion. John was our only person before, but can Oklahoma win this next matchup after we've spoken about it? Was no, still no is John. Look at that. And was yes, still yes. So it looks like a lot of our coaches are relatively inflexible. Is that the word? Unflexible in terms of their viewpoints, and nothing has been changed there. So obviously we want to be respectful of everybody's time, and Rising Coaches has some stuff going forward. So I just want to have some closing remarks. First of all, to all my American friends, happy 4th of July, because I won't be on anything. So, congrats, have a great weekend, stay safe, be safe, have lots of fun, all of that. So thank you for joining me on this weekend. I anticipated some lower numbers, obviously, because of it, but it was great. I think we still covered some good points. Big thanks to the Rising Coaches platform for continuing to connect me with other professionals who are like-minded, and for continuing to give me a platform to share this sort of creative venture that I'm going on. I'm not a super creative guy, but I've enjoyed this so far with the 2 weeks. Big thanks to you guys for joining me again, like I said. And then just sort of to close it off, remember that Rising Coaches got a member spotlight at 11. Check it out. And then there's the community discussion at 3. Check that out. If you're not on Rising Coaches, to my Canadian friends, so Mike left, Greg is in here, get on there when you can. It's definitely something that I recommend. It's a shameless plug here of it right now. But then please tune in next week to my Run It Back number 3, which will be same format, discussing a rematch. We'll be looking at Creighton versus Villanova, who again were similar records. Jimmy got a little excited. I like that.
Hey, we got some good offensive teams, man.
Yeah. And I'll be sure to, if you don't have Synergy access, I'll be sure to post the videos on Rising Coaches. And if you're not on Rising Coaches, hit me up. I'll share that Zoom link with you. I'll get you the box scores and the video just so we can talk about it. I love this. Guys, please hit me up personally too after this. Obviously, always feel free to reach out. I'm an open book, but hit me up with any feedback that you guys might have in terms of how it can be better. I think this has evolved a lot from week 1 to week 2. I think this is more of the format that I'd like to take on, so that guys don't feel like they have to have done all the preparation before coming in. I can give you something to comment on, and we can go from there. Makes it a little bit more user-friendly, so to speak. So if anybody has any last remarks, jump in. If not, head on over and check out that member spotlight. Anything, guys?
Awesome. Just thanks for doing this, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Good to see you, Greg. Really is.
Yeah, you too, man.
Sorry
soon enough. We'll be on the court against each other soon enough.
I hope so. I hope so. All right, I'm going to stop this recording, gentlemen.